Welcome, Gerard Grogans, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
Doing good, Mike. How are you, man?
Doing well. Today, I'm going to have you on as a transformational life coach. We're going to be talking about your work, your history, and how you help people transform their life. Before we begin, can you give us a bit of your backstory and how you got into this work of transformational life coaching?
Like a lot of people, I didn't grow up in the healthiest of family environments. There was, some physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, whatever abuse you want, right? I experienced it. At an early age, right, I knew that I didn't want to be much anything like my dad, much less look like him. But my mom and I was having a conversation one time, and then, she said, Gerard, are you getting enough sleep? Because you're starting to look like your dad, starting to develop dark circles and bags on your eyes, just like him. And as a 10-year-old kid, when she said that, right, I went straight to the mirror to see what she was talking about. And sure enough, I could see what she was talking about, or at least I accepted what she said as my reality. From then on, right, I became shy. I became insecure. Back then, it was a name for Pygmalion effect, but I realized later that I actually became a victim of the Pygmalion effect. And that led me to becoming a victim of plastic surgery malpractice. And then after going through that and having family and friends turn their back on me, I had to go within to really begin to understand myself, to really begin to understand my psychology and understand, why I do the things I do and why I think the way I think. And from there, I began to read and study and master my psychology. I studied Tony Robbins and Joe Dispenza and all these other people about how to change the brain, how to rewire the brain, and then how to become the best version of yourself that you can be. That led me to creating the blueprint, my first book, how to recreate yourself in 6 simple steps. And then that led into Total Transformation Leadership Academy, which is a step-by-step coaching program that I take a small group of people through to go from where they are to where they want to be. Because I know that, a lot of people are dealing with trauma, mental, and whatever. And I know that in order to become the best version of yourself that you need to be, you have to recreate yourself.
I want to ask a quick question, and then we're going to get into the conversation. Do you have any siblings?
I had 7 siblings. My older brother, he passed away, but yeah, I got 6 now.
Okay, I apologize for your loss. When you were growing up, right, did you feel alone, even though you might have had your siblings there with you, maybe to confide in?
I don't think we were taught to kind of share our feelings. We were told, don't cry, don't show your emotions. My dad never said, I love you. He really never talked to us, period. Our siblings, they were dealing with their own trauma. They were abused too. So they were dealing with their own trauma. I had to actually go inside.
No, this is actually great backstory because we're going to have a great conversation now. Because what you went through, so many people go through. They are going through hardship in their life, whether it be from childhood, abuse, perception, whatever it be, and they fight that fight alone. And then when they eventually become adults, they have to heal, but they still think they have to fight that fight alone. And for me, it's like, why not find people that you can work with to get to a better health, better mindset, transform your life? But many people, they're these lone warriors. We're taught, especially here in the West, our culture is if you have a problem, it's your problem. Not so much of, okay, let's work as a community. And even with finances, many people don't understand, like in America, it's like if you have siblings, it's like, all right, this person's going to go out and do this person's going to go out and do that, and they're all independent of each other. But yet, if you go to certain countries in different parts of the world, the family unit stays together. And so if I pooled my resources with my brother, my sister, we can do so much more than if I just did everything myself. We have this solidarity type of mindset. And I wanted to get into that conversation with you now. Why do you think so many people fall into this mindset of fighting the fight alone?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like you mentioned, in the Black community, there's a stigma against mental health. There's a stigma about seeking help outside of the family. There's an old saying, what you better share your business outside of the family. So you're taught in the early age to deal with whatever family issues that you have, deal with it within the family. And it's hard to do when everybody in the family, right, is dealing with, like I said, their own trauma, their own abuse. I think it's a saying that hurt people hurt people. if you're in a family and the environment, right, that you grow up in is not conducive to your growth and your development, then you're going to kind of perpetuate that same cycle, right? Jim Rohn said you're a reflection of the 5 people that you associate with. If everybody that you associate with is hurting and suffering, then that's all you see. So it's kind of like you see model behavior, and then, like I said, you just carry that over into your own life until you make a conscious decision to change it, right? People who deal with abuse, right, sometimes carry that abuse over into their own relationship until they make a conscious decision that they don't want to perpetuate the same cycle. It's all about learned behavior, model behavior. If you're not consciously aware of it, you continue to perpetuate it. So it's a cycle of abuse, and it goes back generation.
I definitely agree with that. And also to add, for the people who think like, all right, I'm not going to focus on the 5 people that I associate with because I'm just going to be by myself. You're going to stay exactly where you are because you are just in it. Think of depression. The best way to get out of depression is to move. I know sometimes people think like, oh, I have to go see a therapist. I have to go see a life coach. Listen, if you want to get out of depression, you move. What happens when you're in that state of depression is that you just stay stagnant, you stay still. The vibrations in your body start to lower. And then that right there is causing your brain to focus on only the problem. What is the problem, not the solution? When you started to look for the solution, you said you started to listen to Tony Robbins, personal development resources, start to look at like neural stuff for the brain, neuroplasticity, trying to get your thoughts in a different wavelength. Was that maybe the most difficult thing you have done in your life, or has there been something more difficult that you had to go through?
Yeah, I think that you mean that experience. Yeah, that was definitely the dark night of the soul. I was definitely at my lowest point in life because, again, like you said, I was dealing with it alone. Family and friends had kind of turned their backs on me. When you're in a Black community, when you start looking different, there's only 2 diagnoses that Black people give you. One, you're either sick, or then 2, you're either on drugs or something like that. And so when you start looking different, then people say, no, I'm not going to mess with you. So they turn their backs on you. And so I had to learn how to first heal the trauma, right? Stop thinking about perpetuating the same cycle of abuse, right, in my own relationships. And then I had to, like I said, go within and then begin to really empower myself. And I guess what triggered it was I was listening to Les Brown, and he was telling his story about how he was labeled uneducatable and mentally challenged. And he found himself in a classroom that he wasn't supposed to be in, right? And the teacher called him up and said, come up here and work out this problem. And Les Brown said, I can't, because 1, I'm labeled uneducatable, and 2, I'm mentally challenged. And the teacher told him to never let anyone else's perception of you determine your reality. And when I heard that, something clicked, and I said, yes, from there on, I'm not going to let anyone else's perception of me determine my reality. Then I started to read, and I got introduced to Tony Robbins, right? Tony Robbins helped me to change my state. Joe Dispenza helped me to rewire my brain because he talks a lot about neuroplasticity, but he also talks about repetition. And so the more you can imagine and visualize and mentally rehearse being the person that you want to be, right, then the brain starts to produce the neural connections that are associated with that. And the more you do it, the stronger those connections become. And so biologically and chemically, right, you start to become someone different because that's what the brain is producing, right, all the time. We become what we think about the most. So that, like I said, was the dark night of the soul. But once I decided that I was going to change, I had to make a conscious decision to change and then go within and then really begin to know myself in order to grow myself.
Yeah. And you do have to want to make that change for the people who are maybe teetering on the edge of that cliff and they're like, I have to make a difference. I have to do something. But fear can be stopping them. Maybe lack of knowledge can be stopping them. Maybe just your upbringing and who you identify is stopping you. Because as you said, the story with Les Brown, he was identified by someone else saying, he's mentally ill, he can't be educated. That was who he became. But if you tell yourself the opposite, if you have teachers, if you have mentors, if you have coaches that say, you know what, I understand you went through that, but I'm going to give you a new narrative to follow. And so the narrative that many people are going through is not helpful. It's toxic in a sense because it's just stopping them from reaching their full potential. And what you do is you help people not only understand themselves, but to go after the things that maybe they're a bit afraid to go after, maybe to go after the life that they think is only for the select few. Because in order to transform your life, you have to transform yourself, you have to transform your mindset, and you have to transform the old person that you once were. Because sometimes you think that you're that kid that was in class that couldn't read or that stuttered, and that was your identity, but that does not have to be your future. And so I would like for us to go down that path now to look at the steps to how someone can begin to transform their life. What is your process to help people?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that. The first thing I would actually suggest that someone does is there are three defining moments that happens in people's lives. And there's actually more, but it's three major ones. And those can be contributed to certain stories. Mine was the first one was my mom saying, you started to look like your dad and you started, right? That's part of my story. And, that actually led to me becoming a victim of the chameleon effect. But that story, has some lessons that's attached to it, right? There's another story about my brother and I having our grades, and I wasn't good in school. I was a C and D student, right? But he was a D and F student. We're coming home and we're sharing our report cards to each other. And I'm looking at his and I'm seeing all D's and F's. I mean, and back then, right, they could use red ink. So his whole report card was just full of red. And I was like, man, they're going to get you, man, because I don't know what you're doing in school, but you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. But mine wasn't that great either, right? But anyway, we come to the house and my mom, says, hey, let me see your report cards. And, we show our report cards and then she shakes her head and says, I'm not sure what you guys are doing in school, but I'm gonna let your dad talk to you, right? And my dad being, like I said, the person that he was, when he came home, right, he came right into the kitchen where we were at and we were eating. And he started cussing us out and saying we were dumb, that we were stupid, that we were not never amount to anything. And while he was saying that, I got mad and I said, no, under my breath, of course, I said, no, you're the dumb, stupid, dumb, blankety blank, right? And then I made a conscious decision that I was going to do better and be better. So the point I'm making is that there's three defining moments that happen in your life that leads to three stories. Once you begin to understand those three defining moments and you write them out as your story, they will actually lead to a common theme that runs through your life. Once you begin to understand what that common theme is, right, that common theme then becomes your why statement, right? Simon Sinek says, calls it your why statement. I call it your identity statement, but it's all based on who you are at the core. It's based on all of the things that you've gone through. So everything that you've gone through in your life, every experience that you've experienced has lessons that are tied to it. And then it leads to one common theme. Once you find that common theme, that runs everything in your life, that you can build life and the business that you want based on that common theme. But the problem is most people don't know who they are at the core because they haven't done a story analysis of who they are. And so once they do that, identify the common theme. Once you identify the common theme, then you start to visualize, you start to imagine how your life could be in every detail, right? From your relationships to your life to your business, you visualize everything, right? And then as you begin to visualize, right, you'll start to have dreams. And then those dreams, if they're big enough, they'll scare you. But if they're not, then that means you need to dream bigger, right? And so as you begin to dream bigger, then you'll have doubts, you'll have fears, you'll have insecurities that come up. You want to become aware of those, not so you can work on them, because the problem is that most people are working on themselves, trying to fix themselves instead of trying to create themselves. George Bernard Shaw said, life is not about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. And so a lot of us spend time working on ourselves instead of creating the person that we truly want to be. Once you start to identify who that is and you start to, like I said, dream and dream big, then you want to think about the steps that you need to take in order to manifest that reality. So as you begin to manifest it or see it in your mind's eye, then you map it out because in mapping it out, the brain starts to connect what you see and what you've been visualizing, and then you put massive action to it. That's what you do in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, all that's really good. I love the aspect of having a story analysis and writing out, your three stories because it's going to determine who you are. And sometimes people, they don't know who they are. They're always looking for something different, something new, and they're always going after the wrong things in life until you pinpoint what you truly need. Because it's easy to see someone who's doing something. Let's say someone's an entrepreneur, they have a business, and you might say, oh, I want to have a successful business too. But everything that is involved in having that successful business, to maybe the long nights, maybe the cold calling, maybe the things that you don't like, the fear, maybe, the aspect of you have to be your own person, your own boss, that right there can take away the comfort of getting a paycheck. And so sometimes people, they think they want something, but they don't understand their true purpose or their why. And I think if they spend some time, wrote out their three stories, they're going to be able to find that why so much more readily. But the issue with many people is that they would rather remain in the dark. How many people do you know, especially people who come to your program, they just throw things in the corner. I'll do it later. This is not like a problem for me today. This is a tomorrow problem. And eventually it starts to pile up. It starts to pile up. And now they're so stressed. They're so anxious where they're at the point where they can't even move. They know their story, but now they're just riddled with so much stress and so much anxiety. How can someone get out of that place?
Yeah, again, it boils down to having clarity about who you are and what you really want to create in life. Because you're going to have opposition, you're going to have doubts, you're going to have fears. And if you concentrate on staying stuck in the mindset that you're at, then that's what the brain is going to keep producing. And you said it earlier that whatsoever you think, that's what you become. So, the moment you stop thinking about what you can't do, what you can't have, how your life is, and you start thinking about what you can do and what you can have, then the brain begins to shift. It begins to create the neural connections or the neurons that are connected to that way of thinking. It boils down to shifting the way you think. And so I tell my clients a lot of times, I use a caterpillar into a butterfly analysis, A caterpillar has the potential to become a butterfly, but not all caterpillars become butterflies, The caterpillar has to choose to become a butterfly. It has to choose to spin its own cocoon. That means it has to do the work, and then it has to go within. And as it goes within, it has no choice but to get to know himself because there's no one else in the cocoon with him. So he has to understand his mind. He has to understand, what makes him do the things he does. But the moment the metamorphosis process begins is the moment that the caterpillar stops thinking about being a caterpillar and he starts thinking about being a butterfly.
No, that's actually a good analogy because many people are just stuck being like a caterpillar, and they're just worried about caterpillar jobs and like a caterpillar mindset instead of a butterfly mindset where you can fly free, where you can see the world in new regards, new heights. But we see our one scene sometimes and we just get stuck there. And I find that when people take just a step, it doesn't have to be a big step, like let's say someone who's trying to get into a better health. You don't have to go to the gym, get all this fancy equipment. Just start walking around the block. Just start small. When you were going through that transformation, you started to listen to some Tony Robbins. You started to read some books. You started to look at your mindset. You started small. And I think people, they fail to understand the power of starting small. Just saying, I'm going to take the first step. As the caterpillar said, I am going to start thinking about being a butterfly. You don't have to worry about being a butterfly. You don't have to worry about being in the cocoon yet. You just have to start to think about it. And when you start to focus on something that you want, if you give yourself some action, if you give yourself some good directive, you are sure enough to get it, but you do have to remain consistent. I want to talk about consistency with you now because people can dream, people can hope, people can find their why, people can understand their story. But if they don't remain consistent, especially in the moments where maybe of fear, in the moments of uncertainty and doubt, how can someone remain consistency I understand the goal is going to be so much sweeter, but how can you tell someone who's just, again, they're just coming from that low place? They don't have much belief in themselves. Think about the Les Brown stuff again. They're just really low. People have been shutting them down their whole life, and they have developed this identity inside them where they can always retreat to because that's their now comfort zone, that's their safe spot. How can we be consistent to elevate ourselves?
I think consistency boils down to having a dream, having a vision. As you mentioned, you just changing what you see in your mind's eye will change what you experience in reality. Malcolm Gladwell talks about creating or becoming an expert takes 10,000 hours, right? But Malcolm didn't have the new research on neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, right? That says that you can visualize, you can imagine, you can mentally rehearse, right, in your mind for 10,000 hours and still get the same results, right? Because the brain doesn't know what's real or imagined, right? It only knows what you think and what you feel. And so the more you can visualize the dreams that you want to have, visualize the life that you want to have, visualize yourself as the person that you want to be that can accomplish those dreams, then the more you do it in your mind, then again, like I said, the brain is going to start to produce those chemical compounds that's associated with the way that you're thinking. And then if you put your emotions into it, right, then you start to get your body involved in it. And now, like you said, you're in this environment and right, you're only in it in your mind. It's not that you've created it, but in your mind, you've created it. And so as you create it in your mind, based on what it is that you want to create, then you start to experience it right ahead of time. Because as you begin to experience it ahead of time, your mind and your body begins to prepare you to into that state. So I would suggest that when you start to visualize, just dreaming about what it is that you want your life to be, start thinking about who you want, who you want to be. And that goes back to once you begin to find out who you are at the core, you get to find the common theme that runs through your life, then that will tell you, okay, I'm a transformational coach, or I am a empowerment coach, or I am whatever it is that you've gone through, right? That has caused that you to experience what you've experienced that led to your common theme. Once you find that common theme, everything else in your life start to change, because then once you know who you are at the core, your true authentic self, then once you start to visualize it and over again, then the body and the mind begins to change, just like the caterpillar. Once you begin to start thinking about flying to the top of the mountain, reaching your highest potential, doing whatever butterflies do, that's the only thing, the difference between a caterpillar's mindset and a butterfly's mindset is its imagination, right? A butterfly's mindset, its imagination, the only thing that limits a butterfly is its imagination. If it chooses to fly to the top of a tree, all it has to do is set its mind to the top of the tree and flap its wings and fly. If it chooses to go to the top of the mountain, it sets its sight to the top of the mountain, flap its wings and fly, all right? Whereas a caterpillar's mindset is limited by its physicality. For one, it can only inch along, right? Carol Dweck calls it, the growth mindset or the fixed mindset. So when you have a fixed mindset, everything that you see is what you can achieve, all right? Because you're limited by your physicality. But when you become a butterfly, your mindset is unlimited.
What we want for our clients is that unlimited mindset. I know sometimes in life we're not going to get the best hands, especially kids. You can't choose your parent, you can't choose your environment. We have to grow out of those things sometimes. I mean, I didn't grow up in the best environment either, but I was able to learn from that and then grow from it. And today my life is wildly and drastically different, and my family's life is wildly and drastically different. And I hope for my children that they don't fall back to what maybe my father did or what my parents were going through, because it seems like that old adage of, strong times create weak men. And so, or good times create weak men. And so what we want is to always have that cycle, kind of always jump back a step. So we never have easy times creating weak men. And what we want is to find strength not only in ourselves, but in who we can become. Because when you're young, yes, the world might feel so big. You might be thinking, I know when I mean, I wasn't really the best student either because boys just learn differently. Boys want to run, they want to play. The last thing you want to do with a boy is sit him down. Like my son, I'm very aware of how he's going to learn, what's going to make him succeed. And when he brings home a report card, maybe C's and B's or D's or whatever he gets, I'm not going to belittle him. I'm not going to say that, hey, you should be smart or you should be smarter. You shouldn't be dumb. It's what my family did. If I ever got a bad grade, it's just not helpful. And so we have to look at how he learns or what he needs. And everyone is going to need something different. And that is why I have you on, Gerard, so we can help people find what they need, how they can transform their life, and how they can begin that process of starting to think like the caterpillar so they can one day turn into the butterfly. As we begin to wrap up, I would love to get some final words from you and then for you to tell the audience where they can find you.
I appreciate it, man. This has definitely been empowering and enlightening. I mean, you had a lot of good questions, and I appreciate those questions. Hopefully that it helps some people who needed that. That's my goal. That's my passion in life, is to help as many people as I can to become the best version of themselves that they can be, and so they can live the life that they want to live. I mean, they can reach me at gerardgrogans.com. I'm on Facebook, Gerard Grogans. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. My main goal in doing anything that I do is to transform people. That's why I call myself a transformational life coach, because I know what it takes to transform myself, but I also know what it takes to transform someone else. And so hopefully I can help.
Well, it's not only a hope, it is going to be a certainty. I find coaches that have gone through the ringer, who have gone through hardship, are well more suited to be coaches than someone who maybe comes from a plush household with no problems. It's more difficult for them to put themselves into someone else's shoes. And I'm not saying that if you put yourself in someone's shoes that you're going to automatically know everything they have gone through. I don't think anyone will know what someone truly goes through, but we can have the empathy and we can say, you know what, I went through hard things, you went through hard things. I'm not saying mine is the same, but let's do this together because I know there's a way out of it. If we're not in a circumstance right now, we can change it. So the work that you do is transforming lives. It could be a person at a time, it could be a group at a time. And I know people are going to be in good hands when they reach out to you. All the links are going to be in the description box below. I encourage everyone to follow him and learn more about what Gerard is doing to help transform people's lives. I want to thank you so much, Gerard, for coming on, spending some time with me, and talking about your work.